Alright, so the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn kicks off with Huck himself giving us the lowdown. Right out the gate, Huck's like, if you read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, you already know me, but if not, I'm about to fill you in. Basically, he's a scrappy, no-rules kid who just got rich thanks to some treasure hunting shenanigans with Tom Sawyer in the last book. Like, bags of gold kind of rich. But don't get it twisted, Huck's not about that bougie life. He's the kind of kid who'd rather live outdoors in his raggedy clothes than sit in a stuffy house being all proper. So, Huck's been living with this lady named Widow Douglas, who's trying her best to civilize him. And by civilize, I mean making him wear clean clothes, eat dinner with actual forks, and pray before meals. Huck is not feeling it. He's like, why do I have to thank some dude in the sky for food I didn't even ask for? Widow Douglas is patient, but her sister, Miss Watson, is a whole other story. She's super strict and always nagging Huck about how he's gonna end up in the bad place if he doesn't shape up. Huck's over here thinking, if Miss Watson is going to the good place, then the bad place sounds lit. Huck's internal rebellion starts bubbling over, and you just know he's not gonna last long in this clean-cut setup. But before he can figure out how to escape, things get weird. He sneaks off one night for some fresh air. Translation, he's over this whole bedtime thing, and hears a meow noise outside. It's Tom Sawyer, his ride or die, pulling up with the secret signal. Tom's like the friend who always has the wildest ideas and zero chill. Of course, Huck's all in. The two of them sneak off into the night like they're in some stealth mission from a video game. Tom leads Huck to Miss Watson's slave, Jim, who's sleeping outside. Tom wants to mess with Jim for laughs, like tying him to a tree or something, but Huck's not about it. He doesn't say anything, but you can tell he's already way less chaotic evil than Tom. Instead, they just take some candles and sneak off, with Tom leaving a nickel as payment. Classic Tom, causing trouble but acting like it's fine because he's polite about it. After that, Tom drags Huck to meet up with a bunch of other boys to form their own gang. And not just any gang, Tom wants it to be a full-on crew of robbers, complete with secret oaths and codes. They're sitting in this cave, all hyped up like they're about to start the next big heist in GTA Online. Tom's pitching this elaborate plan where they'll rob people, ransom them, and make everyone swear loyalty under pain of death. Huck's mostly nodding along, but you can tell he's side-eyeing some of these ideas, like, are we actually doing this, or is Tom just extra again? The whole vibe is a mix of intense and hilarious. They make this dramatic blood oath, and Tom's like, if you snitch, your whole family will die. Huck awkwardly points out that he doesn't have any family, except for his abusive dad who's never around. The boys kind of shrug and move on, but it's one of those oh dang moments where you realize Huck's life isn't all fun and games. Tom wraps up the meeting by flexing his imagination, talking about all the wild adventures they'll have, and referencing stories from books he's read. Huck's never heard of half the stuff Tom's talking about, but he's rolling with it because that's just what you do when your best friend is the self-proclaimed leader of the squad. By the end of these 2 chapters, you've got a solid picture of Huck's world. He's stuck between 2 extremes, the buttoned-up life of Widow Douglas and the chaotic antics of Tom Sawyer. Huck's independent streak is strong, and you can already tell he's not going to stick to anyone's rules for long. Whether it's sneaking out at night or joining a pretend gang, Huck's all about freedom, even if it means a little mischief along the way. And with Tom leading the charge, you know this is just the start of a wild ride. Buckle up. Alright, chapters 3 and 4 of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn are basically Huck's life in small-town chaos mode. Twain's out here mixing boyhood adventures with some low-key existential dread, and Huck's just trying to figure out his place in a world that can't make up its mind about whether it's fun or terrifying. So, chapter 3 kicks off with Huck trying to figure out this whole prayer thing. After hearing Miss Watson say it's basically like a wish-granting app for good boys, Huck's like, bet, let's try it out. He prays for fishing hooks, because obviously, what else would you ask for, but nothing shows up. Naturally, Huck's like, prayer is trash. It's broken. I'm out. Miss Watson tries to school him on the idea that prayer isn't about getting cool loot but becoming a good person, and Huck's like, hard pass on that character build, thanks. Meanwhile, Tom Sawyer is still out here making life extra weird. Huck gets dragged back into Tom's little gang of robbers, which is basically just a bunch of kids larping pirates and ninjas but with more stealing and fake blood. Tom goes full dungeon master, making up this elaborate oath about how they'll rob people, kill them, and keep their secrets forever, or else. The gang's all in until someone's like, wait, what if we get caught? Tom's ready with the most anime answer ever, no worries, we'll just kill their families. Huck and the boys are like, that's dark, bro, but they go with it anyway because boys will be boys, and chaos is fun. But the gang quickly realizes their robbery career isn't going anywhere. They raid a Sunday school picnic instead of some epic loot stash, and honestly, the whole thing is low-key embarrassing. Huck's starting to think Tom might just be a guy who talks big but doesn't deliver. You know, the friend who promises an insane co-op mission but keeps disconnecting mid-game. Now, chapter 4 gets a little more serious, but it still has that Huck is trying his best, but the world is weird vibe. We find out Huck's been living with the Widow Douglas, who's trying to civilize him, and it's kinda working. He's learning to read, write, and pretend to care about table manners. But Huck's still not feeling it. To him, it's like being stuck in tutorial mode when all he wants to do is explore the open world. One day, Huck notices some SUS footprints in the snow outside the widow's house. He's not dumb, he recognizes the tracks because they've got a weird crossmark in the heel. And who's the only guy rocking cursed Crocs like that? Huck's drunk and abusive dad, Pap. Yup, the guy everyone thought skipped town or died in a ditch is back. Huck is like, great, just when things were getting semi-chill. Huck freaks out a little and decides to take action, so he goes to Jim, the local fortune-telling MVP, for some guidance. Jim pulls out this hairball he says is magic because, you know, why not, and does a whole fortune-telling bit for Huck. Jim's like, the ball says your dad is either gonna stay or go. Super helpful, right? But then Jim gets real, telling Huck he's got a tough road ahead, full of highs and lows. Basically, it's like Jim just spoiled the entire season of Huck's life but left out the important details. By the end of Chapter 4, Huck's got this sinking feeling that Pap is back to cause trouble. His world is already chaotic, what with Tom's wild schemes and Miss Watson's relentless attempts to civilize him. But now, with Pap in the mix, Huck's realizing life might be less about fun adventures and more about dodging real danger. It's the moment in every hero's journey where they start to see the stakes, and Huck's starting to piece together that his life's no bedtime story. So, there you have it, Huck trying to make sense of grown-up concepts like morality and danger while navigating a world that's equal parts goofy and grim. If this were a Netflix show, these chapters would be the calm before the storm episodes, with Huck side-eyeing the snow tracks and going, something wicked this way comes. And if it were a TikTok, it'd be captioned, when the dad you never wanted DLC unlocks unexpectedly. Stay tuned, because Huck's about to dive headfirst into the deep end of drama. Alright, let's talk about chapters 5 and 6 of the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, because things are going downhill faster than a busted shopping cart on a steep hill. Enter Pap, Huck's deadbeat dad, and trust me, this dude is the definition of hot mess express. The guy just randomly shows up like a bad save file you thought you deleted, and of course, he immediately starts making trouble. Pap's first move? Rolling up to the widow Douglas's house looking like he just rage quit life. His clothes are rags, his skin's all pale and gross, and he's got that hasn't showered in weeks energy. He's basically the kind of guy you'd cross the street to avoid. Pap wastes no time tearing into Huck for acting all fancy now that he's been living with the widow. He's like, oh, you think you're better than me just because you can read and write now? Big man with your books and your clean clothes. It's giving major insecure toxic dad vibes. Pap's mad Huck's actually doing well for himself, and instead of being proud, he's jealous. Classic villain arc. But it gets worse. Pap finds out Huck's sitting on a cool $6,000 thanks to that treasure he and Tom found in the Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and his eyes light up like a loot goblin spotting legendary gear. He's immediately like, that money's mine, kid. Huck, being smarter than he looks, already gave the cash to Judge Thatcher to keep it out of Pap's grimy hands. Pap throws a fit, storms off, and starts scheming harder than a mob boss in a heist movie. Cut to the courtroom, where Pap tries to convince the new judge to give him custody of Huck. He's all, look at me, I'm a loving father. Spoiler, he's not. Judge Thatcher and the widow are both like, no way. But this judge doesn't know Pap's whole deal yet and decides to give him a chance. Big mistake. Pap does what any responsible dad would do, gets blackout drunk and falls off the roof of a house that night. 10 out of 10 parenting, right? Now, in Chapter 6, Pap fully embraces his worst dad ever title. He kidnaps Huck and drags him off to the sketchy cabin in the woods. It's not exactly a cozy Airbnb, it's more like the kind of place Jason Voorhees would hang out. Huck's locked up like Rapunzel, except instead of a tower, it's a dirty shack, and instead of long hair, he's got a solid case of PTSD brewing. Huck isn't about to sit around waiting for rescue, though. The guy's a natural problem solver. Pap spends most of his time getting wasted and ranting about the government, because of course he does. He's mad about taxes, mad about them big city folks, and especially mad about a black man he heard about who's free and successful. Pap's racism is out in full force here, and it's as ugly as his nasty face. Huck just sits there like, cool story, bro, while quietly plotting his escape. Speaking of Pap's unhinged energy, one night he goes full berserk mode. He's drunk, hallucinating, and waving around a knife, screaming that Huck's the devil. Huck's dodging like he's in a boss fight, trying not to get stabbed. The guy's survival instincts are on point. By morning, Pap's passed out, and Huck's like, yeah, this isn't sustainable. Time to dip. These chapters are basically Huck's realization that if he doesn't take control of his life, Pap's gonna ruin it. Huck's stuck in a bad situation, but he's already plotting his next move. The vibe here is like being stuck in a survival game where your teammate is trying to sabotage you at every turn. Huck's resilience and creativity are setting the stage for some next-level problem-solving, but for now, he's just biding his time. If this were a movie, these chapters would be the gritty backstory montage where the hero decides to fight back. If it were a TikTok, the caption would be, when your dad locks you in a shack, but you've got main character energy. Huck's about to make some big moves, so stay tuned for the escape plan of the century. Alright, buckle up, because we're diving headfirst into the wild shenanigans of the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, specifically chapters 7 and 8. It's like a mix of a survival game, a jailbreak, and one of those Netflix shows where someone fakes their death and goes full ninja mode. Huck is the main character, and his life is a whole mess, chaotic, dramatic, and, honestly, kinda genius. So, here's the sitch, Huck's stuck in this cabin in the woods with his sketchy-as-heck dad, Pap. Pap's not winning any Dad of the Year awards, he's basically the real-life version of those rage-quitting video game players who just smash everything and blame you for it. Pap's been keeping Huck locked up because he wants the money Huck scored from the earlier book, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, if you're not caught up. But Huck? He's not about to let some drunk guy with daddy issues hold him back. Huck hatches this big brain plan to escape, and it's pure survival mode strategy, like he's in Minecraft, but with zero cheats and Pap as a creeper. First, he finds the saw, and instead of cutting wood like a normie, he's out here sawing a hole in the wall behind some furniture so Pap doesn't notice. The whole time, he's super sneaky, waiting for the right moment like he's in Among Us, trying not to get sussed out. One day, Pap heads to town to run errands, translation, get wasted, and Huck knows this is his chance to go full rogue. He pulls off this insane fake death stunt, CSI-level detail and all. He kills a pig, smears the blood all over the cabin, and drags stuff around to make it look like he got straight up murdered and dumped in the river. He even leaves some boot prints for the drama. It's dark, yeah, but remember, this dude is desperate. Pap's no picnic. Once the scene is set, Huck grabs his gear, hops into a canoe he'd hidden earlier, and yeets himself down the river to Jackson's Island. It's this small, uninhabited island in the middle of the river, and it's got major chill vibes, a perfect hideout. He's out here vibing, thinking he's escaped the worst, until bam! Things get real again. Now, on to Chapter 8. Huck wakes up on Jackson's Island, and it's all serene and peaceful, like one of those moments in Zelda, Breath of the Wild where you're just exploring and chilling. But then he hears this boom across the water. Turns out, people are out searching for his dead body with cannons and bread loaded with mercury, because apparently that's how you find dead bodies in the 1800s, zero logic, but hey, they tried. Huck's not just lying low, he's straight up hiding like he's in Fortnite, dodging their attempts to track him down. For a while, Huck's soloing on the island, enjoying nature and living off the land, very Bear Grylls meets anime protagonist. But then, plot twist, he's not alone. One day, he stumbles upon none other than Jim, Miss Watson's runaway slave. Now, Jim's got his own reasons for dipping out. Turns out, Miss Watson was planning to sell him down the river, and Jim's like, nope, not today. So, now these two are an unlikely duo, teaming up like they're in some co-op survival game. At first, Huck's shook. Jim's scared too, because he thinks Huck's a ghost, remember, the whole town thinks Huck's dead. But Huck's like, nah, bro, I'm alive, and the two of them start talking. Jim spills his tea about why he ran away, and Huck, to his credit, doesn't snitch. Even though society's been brainwashing him to think helping a runaway slave is bad, Huck's not about to throw Jim under the bus. So, now we've got Huck and Jim, both outcasts, chilling on Jackson's Island. They're low-key bonding, sharing their stories and forming this wholesome partnership. Jim's super practical and has all this survival knowledge, like how to predict the weather and avoid snakes. Huck's just happy he's not alone anymore. It's like when you team up with a random player online, and they turn out to be the ultimate carry. Together, they set the stage for the epic adventures to come. Huck's learning to see the world differently through Jim's perspective, even though he doesn't fully realize it yet. It's the start of a friendship that's not just about surviving, it's about understanding and growing, even when society's telling them they shouldn't. So, there you have it. Huck's out here breaking free from Pap's toxic grip, faking his death with big drama energy, and teaming up with Jim for what's shaping up to be the ultimate river adventure. It's messy, raw, and real, with just enough humor and heart to keep you hooked. If this was a series, Chapters 7 and 8 would definitely be the point where you hit next episode without even thinking about it. Stay tuned for more chaos, riverboat vibes, and Huck trying to figure out life one wild moment at a time. Alright, so Chapters 9 and 10 of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn are where Huck and Jim start getting serious about their island life. Imagine this, it's like they're playing The Forest but set in the 1800s, with no Wi-Fi and way more mosquitoes. Huck and Jim are out here trying to survive, dodging trouble, and figuring out how to be the ultimate survival brothers. First up, the weather decides to come at them like a boss fight. This epic storm rolls in, thunder booming, rain pouring, the whole sky lit up like a fireworks show gone wild. Huck is vibing with it because, of course, he's Huck, nature boy with zero fear. He's out there like, yeah, this storm slaps, while Jim's being way smarter and suggesting they find some cover. They stumble across this cave on the island, which is straight up peak survival energy. Think of it as their secret base, complete with protection from nosy folks on the river and bad weather. Jim's the MVP here, making the cave all cozy, while Huck's like, this is the best hideout ever. The storm does more than just mess up the vibes, though, it floods the river. But, silver lining? Floods bring loot. Huck and Jim are basically scavengers now, rolling up on all the stuff the river spits out. They find a raft, which is a total W because now they've got transportation. Then they come across a whole washed-up house floating down the river. This part is equal parts spooky and hilarious. They climb into this busted-up house, and it's like something out of a horror game. Broken furniture, creepy vibes, and, plot twist, a literal dead guy chilling in the corner. Jim takes one look and is like, nope, we are not dealing with that. He tells Huck not to peek, saying it's bad luck and all. Huck's curious, of course, classic Huck move, but Jim's firm. This dude's like the wise, no-nonsense mentor every reckless anime protagonist needs. They grab what they can from the house, pillaging FTW, and dip, leaving the corpse to do its thing. Now, fast forward to Chapter 10, where things get a little messy. Huck, being Huck, can't stop thinking about that bad luck Jim mentioned. He's curious if it's legit or if Jim's just making stuff up. Huck's a skeptic, like one of those gamers who refuses to believe in the RNG gods until they roll a crit. But soon, things get a little too real. Huck finds the snake skin and is like, ooh, cool. Jim, on the other hand, is not having it. He warns Huck that touching snake skin is the ultimate bad juju. Huck brushes it off, but karma comes knocking hard. Later, while Huck's being all chill, Jim gets bit by a rattlesnake. And not just any rattlesnake, it's the mate of the dead one Huck left lying around earlier. Yup, turns out Huck's little prank, leaving the snake there to scare Jim, backfired big time. Jim's hurt, and Huck's feeling all kinds of guilty. It's like one of those moments where a prank in a teen movie goes way too far, and suddenly no one's laughing. Luckily, Jim knows how to handle it. He's out here being a DIY medic, using some herbs and old-school remedies to treat the bite. Huck's super apologetic and tries to help, but you can tell he's realizing just how dumb he was. The lesson here? Don't mess with nature, or Jim. Even with all this drama, the two of them still have their wholesome moments. They're scavenging, cooking, and just kicking back by the campfire, telling stories. Huck's starting to see Jim as more than just Miss Watson's slave. Jim's this chill, funny, and super smart dude, and their bond is growing stronger by the day. They're like the dream team, navigating life on the run, learning from each other, and figuring out how to survive in a world that's not exactly rooting for either of them. By the end of these chapters, Huck's learned a little more about respecting Jim and the whole bad luck thing. Jim's shown he's not just some sidekick, he's resourceful, caring, and low-key a boss. They've got their raft, their cave, and enough supplies to keep them going for now. Life on the island isn't perfect, but it's theirs. They've built this little slice of freedom, and for two people running from a world that's trying to control them, that's everything. So, yeah, chapters 9 and 10 are all about survival, teamwork, and a bit of chaos, because it's Huck Finn, and chaos follows this kid like a shadow. It's equal parts wholesome and nerve-wracking, with just enough spooky River House vibes and snake drama to keep you on your toes. If this was a movie, this is where you'd pause to grab popcorn because you know things are about to get even crazier. Stay tuned, folks. Huck and Jim's river adventures are just getting started. Alright, chapters 11 and 12 of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn are where things start heating up, with Huck trying to play detective/spy and then somehow ending up in the middle of a river pirate drama. It's like a mix of Stranger Things and Sea of Thieves, but with way more bad decisions and zero demogorgons. So, here's what goes down. Huck gets this nagging feeling that their chill little island hideout might not stay secret for long. He decides to roll into town undercover, because what's a good story without a little sneaky espionage? But here's the twist, instead of just, acting normal, Huck throws on a disguise. He's rocking a dress he found in the loot from the floating house. Yup, our boy's out here cosplaying as a girl to blend in. Think Milan, but way less graceful and a lot more chaotic. He heads into town and finds this random woman in a house who seems friendly enough. She's new in town, so she doesn't recognize Huck, but she's also super sharp, like one of those NPCs in a stealth game that can spot you even when you're crouching behind a barrel. Huck introduces himself as Sarah Williams, but his act is shaky at best. The woman's not buying it and starts dropping some sneaky questions to trip him up. Huck's over here sweating bullets, trying to keep his story straight, but it's like watching someone fail a charisma check in Dungeons and Dragons. Spoiler, it's not going well. While this awkward conversation is happening, Huck learns some juicy intel. Apparently, everyone thinks Jim, the real MVP of this story, killed Huck and ran off. There's a whole reward out for Jim's capture, and the locals are out here scheming to search Jackson's island. Huck's like, oh, this is bad, but he keeps his cool just long enough to hear more. Then, in a panic, he accidentally switches up his name mid-sentence, calling himself Mary instead of Sarah. Rookie mistake. The woman's onto him, but Huck bails before she can call him out. Back on the island, Huck's all, Jim, we gotta bounce ASAP, and Jim's like, say less. They pack up their stuff, jump on the raft, and peace out before the posse shows up. It's this intense, high-stakes escape that feels like the end of an action movie, except instead of explosions, it's just two dudes paddling like their lives depend on it. Now, chapter 12 kicks off their next big adventure. With the island drama behind them, Huck and Jim are cruising down the Mississippi River, living that raft life. It's peaceful at first, starry skies, cool river breezes, the whole vibe is immaculate. Huck's out here narrating like it's some kind of travel vlog, describing the scenery and how they're just chilling and living free. It's all good, until Huck gets bored. And you know what happens when Huck gets bored, chaos. One night, as they're floating along, they spot this wrecked steamboat in the middle of the river. Huck, being the ultimate chaos gremlin, decides they should check it out. Jim's like, nah, bad idea, let's keep it moving, but Huck convinces him with the classic line, what's the worst that could happen? Famous last words, am I right? So, they board the steamboat, and it's giving major haunted ship vibes. The place is creaky, dark, and straight up eerie, like something out of Pirates of the Caribbean. But instead of ghosts, they find a gang of literal criminals hanging out inside. Yup, Huck and Jim have stumbled right into the middle of a robbery gone wrong. These dudes are arguing over whether to kill one of their own because, trust issues. Huck and Jim are eavesdropping like it's the juiciest drama ever, but also trying not to get caught. Huck decides they need to be the heroes here and come up with a plan to save the poor guy the gang wants to kill. It's a bold move, considering they're outnumbered and weaponless, but Huck's got big main character energy. Unfortunately, before they can pull off anything heroic, the situation gets worse. The gang notices their boat is about to sink, plot twist, and starts scrambling to escape. Huck and Jim realize their own raft is floating away, so now it's a mad dash to get out alive. Huck manages to steal the gang's boat, pro gamer move, and uses it to pick up Jim. Together, they paddle away like they just hit the jackpot in Grand Theft Auto. Huck's all hyped up about their daring escape, but Jim's like, bro, why did we even go on that boat? Fair point, Jim. So, to wrap it up, these 2 chapters are pure chaos. Huck's undercover mission almost gets him busted, their island hideout is compromised, and their river adventure turns into a rescue op turned escape room nightmare. Through it all, Huck's still making wild decisions, Jim's still the voice of reason, and their partnership keeps getting stronger. It's messy, hilarious, and somehow still wholesome, classic Huck Finn energy. Keep your paddles ready, because this ride is only getting wilder. Alright, buckle up, because chapters 13 and 14 of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn are like a mashup of an action movie and a philosophy class, with Huck and Jim diving into danger, making epic escapes, and then getting into the nerdiest argument you didn't know you needed. It's classic Huck Finn chaos, but with a sprinkle of deep thoughts. So, remember how Huck and Jim pulled that big brain heist, swiping the robbers' getaway boat? Well, chapter 13 kicks off with them paddling like maniacs, trying to put some serious distance between themselves and that sinking steamboat of doom. Huck, ever the drama king, is suddenly hit with a case of the feels. He's like, wait a minute, those robbers are gonna drown. Should we, help them? Jim gives him the side eye of the century, like, you mean the same dudes who were plotting murder and wouldn't hesitate to off us if they caught us? Huck's guilt complex is showing again, but you can't really hate him for it, it's part of his whole trying to figure out right from wrong thing. So, instead of just forgetting about the robbers like a normal person, Huck comes up with a scheme to help them without risking his own neck. It's such a Huck move, reckless, clever, and slightly absurd. He rows over to a nearby town, finds a watchman on duty, and spins this wild story about how his family is stuck on that sinking wreck. He's like, help! My rich uncle's gonna lose his entire fortune if you don't save us. Classic play the rich card move. The watchman buys it and speeds off to rescue the people on the wreck, who, spoiler alert, are the very robbers Huck is pretending to care about. Big brain play, Huck. Feeling pretty good about his good deed, even if it's 90% bluff, Huck heads back to Jim, and they finally have a moment to relax. They're floating down the river under the stars, and it's all calm and peaceful again. Huck's hyped, thinking he's just pulled off some 200 IQ move, while Jim is just happy they didn't die. They laugh about their escape, share some snacks, and Huck does what he does best, narrate everything like it's a travel blog. Then we roll into chapter 14, and things take a turn for the weird and wonderful. While rummaging through their loot, from their little scavenger hunt on the wreck, Huck finds this stash of books and magazines. Now, instead of just chilling and appreciating their good fortune, Huck decides it's time for a history lesson. He starts telling Jim all about kings, dukes, and this one French guy named Louis XVI who got his head chopped off. It's like the most random, chaotic TED talk you've ever heard. Jim, being the practical guy he is, has one question: why are these kings so extra? He can't wrap his head around why someone would act all high and mighty just because they're born into it. Huck tries to explain monarchy, but Jim's just not buying it. Then they dive into this hilarious debate about language, and things go completely off the rails. Huck mentions that French people don't speak English, and Jim's like, wait, what? That makes zero sense. Why wouldn't everyone just talk the same? Huck tries to explain how languages work, but Jim's not having it. He's like, if a cat meows and a cow moos, they still understand each other. Why can't humans get it together? It's honestly one of the funniest scenes in the book, because Jim's over here spitting pure logic, and Huck's floundering, trying to defend something he doesn't fully understand himself. You can almost hear Jim going, make it make sense, bro, while Huck's brain buffer is straight up glitching. They go back and forth for a while, and in the end, Huck gives up. He's like, fine, Jim, you win, because trying to argue with Jim's practical genius is a losing game. Even though this chapter is mostly just them arguing about French and royalty, it's weirdly wholesome. You can see how much Huck respects Jim, even if he doesn't totally realize it yet. Jim's not just a sidekick in this story, he's smart, funny, and not afraid to call Huck out when he's being ridiculous. Their friendship is leveling up, and it's honestly so satisfying to watch. So, to recap, Huck saves the day with his smooth-talking con artist skills, Jim continues to be the MVP of common sense, and the two of them spend half a chapter arguing about stuff that doesn't matter but somehow ends up being super entertaining. These two are basically the OG chaotic duo, and their river adventure is just getting better and better. Stay tuned, because you already know the next chapters are going to bring even more drama, laughs, and probably some bad decisions. Huck and Jim forever, y'all.